Welcome to another gorgeous day on this planet Earth and another dose of Did You Know? And with me today is Miss Heidi. How are you, Heidi?
I am doing fabulous, Danny. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And what I love actually, and it just came to me like that, is that you are doing your family dinner, spending time with your family, and I am doing the same. So we're not actually anywhere where we normally would lay our head.
That is so true. But you know what? It gets to in the new world we live in, we actually get to still be productive, do the job part of our lives while spending more time with family. So I'm out here in Brookings, Oregon, instead of Sun Valley, Idaho.
Yep. And where am I? We're East Mesa, which is way hotter than New Hampshire. So I'm having a little temperature transition here, but it's actually, we're both here for different transitional. I'm bringing my boys into their new section of life, and you're kind of going from one area of your life into a blossoming new area. So tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we're going to dig right in.
Okay, so you're right. I think that in times of transition, we often have a moment to step back, reflect, and figure out, who do I want to be next? It used to be like, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I think I'm supposed to be grown up by now, but I'm not sure that's true. But I have decided to kind of move in and follow my passion. And that is, I have been a lifelong heart patient. And that means I was diagnosed with a rare heart arrhythmia at the age of 18 back in 1982. So when you think about how old technology is and how fast it changes, I had an experimental surgery in 1983 where they electrocuted parts of my heart, rewired me, and I've been 100% pacemaker dependent since 1983.
Okay, I have to stop you for a second there. That sounds so primitive and scary.
They used DC current. They had never seen kind of this thing, and it was a new procedure straight out of the experimental labs. And they ran DC current up my leg into my heart and then just electrocuted things.
Wow.
What today it's called cardioversion. Many people that are diagnosed with AFib can go in and have, an ablation. And today they do it with lasers and they can pinpoint. But I was the first human to have this done. So I was kind of blazing the trail of what happens when we just electrocute parts of the heart.
Did you have a conversation with your parents, or your parents have a conversation with you about this? I mean, that whole mindset, I think, is almost like a fundamental piece of
who I am.
Who you are.
Yeah. And we did. So, because I was 18 when I was diagnosed. So I was still living at home with mom and dad. And, that initial diagnosis of learning that it was an arrhythmia that I had been born with. They had never diagnosed it. As I was growing up, and a small child, and I would feel lightheaded. My mom took me in, and it's like, oh, she's not getting enough salt in her diet. And then, because I started competitive sports at the age of 7, which is another part of, who am I? I'm an athlete at heart. And having that athletic heart is what allowed me to survive a lot of this, because, my heart rate would go to 270 and it would drop down to 12 and 14 beats per minute. I couldn't figure out how to count my heartbeats. When you would go to PE and you put your fingers on your wrist.
Yes.
I couldn't figure out how all the kids came up with a number. And I'm like, okay, this is like total user error. I'm just going to make something up that sounds right. Because how do I tell somebody I can't count those?
Yeah, you would definitely seem like it was you. It was here, not here.
And you have to remember that I felt my heart beating all the time, and I could see it pounding in my chest. No one ever told me it's supposed to beat regular, and that you're also not supposed to feel it racing and pounding. But to me, it's like, no, heart's working great. My brain's probably just lightheaded. And then, so, when I was then in 13, 14, the doctor still feeling lightheaded. It's like, it's just hormones. So finally, at the age of 18, I was going in for knee surgery and had this, to clean up. I was a professional windsurfer, competitive skier, played, sports all my life. And it was doing the pre-op testing as the piece of paper, I had that EKG piece of paper comes out. everybody's eyes get really big and they're like, wow, 270 beats per minute, not normal. And I'm like, no wonder I couldn't count them. So, this is 18 years old and my poor parents having to go through this process. Mm-hmm. I spent the next 30 days in the hospital while they played Guess the Arrhythmia back then at UCSF, learning that, the drug therapies weren't working. They couldn't figure out what to do with me and didn't know why I'd lived as long as I did. We oftentimes today hear about athletes, kids on the soccer field or the basketball court that just drop dead. That's the type of condition I had. Fortunately, they found it because of that knee surgery, which they canceled.
Ever get the knee surgery done is the question. No.
I did eventually, but it was, talk about life transitions. You go in thinking you're a healthy 18-year-old athlete, and within 5 minutes, you turn into a heart patient. You're being rushed off to the coronary care unit. You don't feel any different than you ever have in your life, but all of a sudden everything has changed and you're no longer who you thought you were. So that was really interesting. And then you're told that they don't know how long you'll live and they don't currently have a therapy to fix you. So you kind of, for me, I chose to sort of look at everything as I'm going to live every day to its fullest. So moved to Maui to windsurf and just, enjoyed each day. Very short term, as far as I wasn't thinking future. It was like, well, I don't need to continue this college thing right now because I don't know if I'll live. I'll go.
I'm not going to do those classes if that's going to be my last day. Forget it.
Exactly. Like, accounting in a business degree is like not my aspiration. So the following year I went and I became an experimental patient. And then that was 1983. They did the ablation, leaving me 100% pacemaker dependent, which, fast forward to having 20 some years later where I had to get my leads replaced. So I've had 7 pacemakers. I'm on my 7th one right now.
How long do pacemakers normally last now?
So pacemakers, like an initial implant of a pacemaker lasts between 8 and 10 years.
Okay.
However, not everything always works out that way. So the first one lasted as it should. They put the next one in, but technology had changed. The pacemakers had gotten smaller. They put the next one in. The pocket where the old pacemaker was big. The new one was small. It started sliding under my armpit so I could put my arms out in front of me, turn my head, and speed my heart up. So we pulled back.
It's a thing I never thought of.
Well, neither does the healthcare industry. So, it's like after 3 years, we took that one out. We put another one in under the heart, under the chest muscle. Then we ended up at kind of that, now your leads are going bad. So then they pull the leads out. Well, first they tucked them in, they got infected. And then I ended up with viral cardiomyopathy and heart failure. So I had to learn to play golf because I couldn't ride my bike anymore.
I love that. I learned to play golf. Not that. See, this is the mindset of just like you trained yourself to be like, I'm going to live my day because I don't know. I mean, they're going to tell me whatever they're going to tell me, and it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, so when you're diagnosed with a chronic disease, you have a choice to be a victim of the condition and live your life around the illness, or you can say, all right, I have this thing.
Yeah.
But what do what is it that's going to cause me to want to wake up each day and live a happy life? And, when you have heart failure and you're used to being able to get out and ride your bike and push yourself and be an athlete, and all of a sudden going upstairs is difficult, I still wanted to be able to go outside. I wanted to enjoy living in Sun Valley, Idaho. So my husband and I was like, well, I can push that golf cart thingy around, and that will allow me to be outside in a beautiful park-like setting, see the mountains and just, so we did that for 3 years. And to be honest, it was the absolute best thing my husband and I could have ever done. We joined a golf club and we would get out and play, 3 times a week in the afternoon, just do like sunset 9 holes. And it was such a wonderful time for the two of us to just spend together and talk and walk and learn a new activity together, because neither of us had done it.
Oh, it's kind of like you personally live your life to the fullest. But that doesn't, when you're married and you're including in somebody else, that looks different. So that made that relationship have that same kind of concept.
It did. And we had this amazing growth together. So instead of me becoming a victim of now heart failure, and my husband losing his partner, his play partner, and having to him, kind of figure out what he's going to give up. It was, instead of us feeling like we gave up anything, we together got to learn and add new things to our life.
That is, okay, relationship tip of, I don't know, not just the day, like the year, right there, everybody. Brilliant.
And so from that, I kept getting, if you take your medication and you continue to get that little bit of exercise and you keep pushing yourself, my heart failure started to get better. And then by 2010, I had scar tissue that was blocking my whole vascular system, and I had to go in for open heart surgery, which was the first time I had to really identify as like, wow, I guess maybe I'm a heart patient. And because
you never thought of that before.
I didn't. And part of that was because think about the messaging around heart disease. Yeah. It's the number one killer of everyone.
Actually, I think you want me to give a description of somebody. It's like an older person who's kind of, things are just letting go from age.
And they didn't choose good lifestyle. They didn't make good lifestyle decisions.
Right.
And they probably, so heart disease is this number one killer of everyone, but you probably deserved it. Mic drop. Mm-hmm. Think about cancer. Cancer community comes out, they start planning your ascent of Mount Everest. It's like, you know what? You didn't deserve this. We're going to help you not just survive, but thrive.
Right.
And so people thrive, and there's a community around that. Heart disease doesn't have that. So I never connected to any of the messaging around heart disease. I'm not a heart patient. I've none of that. Eat right, get exercise, be healthy, don't smoke, those were not my issues. I never did any of those. I just happened to be born with a weird heart, and then it the unintended consequences of multiple surgeries left me with, you're going in for open heart surgery. So that was why I never identified as a heart patient. When they cut your sternum open to like muck around inside, it's like, well, I guess I'm a heart patient.
I guess I will give myself that label now. I've earned that.
Yeah, it's like I have all the scars to prove it. It's like expensive body art. So that was, but when I was preparing to go in for the surgery, again, I didn't want my definition of success to be based on I survived the surgery. I decided to find a bike race that I would then train for. So when I went into surgery, I was already training in my mind, training for a bike race. I'd already signed up for it. I had 3 friends that were going to do it with me, so we could do it as a relay. It's a 200-mile single-day bike race that goes from Logan, Utah to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It's called the Loaded Jaw Classic. And I figured all 200 miles was probably a little much for the 5 months after surgery. So I said, okay, we'll each do 50 miles. But having that community of people training with me because we had a goal. And each day, even though my training plan started with just walking laps in the hospital and then doing my first 4-minute spin bike ride, and I was terrified, and it was, oh my gosh, and it was level 1, 4 minutes. But if I'd not done the 4 minutes, I couldn't get to 10 minutes, and I couldn't get to 20 minutes, then back on my bike for my first little ride. And then that turning into, crossing the finish line, 5 months later after of that, for my Loaded Jaw Classic thing, I was like, okay, I can do this. So my 1 year anniversary, did a century bike race down in Palm Springs. And then at that 18-month, so the following year, I did the whole 200-mile bike race solo and crossed that finish line. It's like, I'm not broken. I'm not a victim. And I can continue to have the peer group and the friends and the activities that make me excited to get up each day.
Yeah.
And that's where the beginnings of Tour de Heart, which is kind of the long answer of what am I doing now? But the creating a platform to provide hope and inspiration for heart patients, to showcase those success stories, because there are many people like me that feel really alone because they want so much more than to just live within the box of heart disease. They want to go and live their life. So Tour de Heart is about showcasing those success stories, providing that hope, that inspiration, and even aspiration for people diagnosed or dealing with issues, heart issues, to choose to get well. And then providing them with that information and tools on, okay, here are some of the wearable devices that will give you real-time insights so that you can come home from your hospital procedure and learn to let go of the fear, learn to trust your body, learn to feel safe and confident, and then you can do more. And then you become in control of your journey and setting, what is in your bucket list. From that bucket list, what is the goal you want to put on, like put a pin in the calendar and aim for? And then what does that plan look like? What information, and tools do you need to get to that goal? And then celebrate and then find your next goal. But that's what Tour de Heart is all about, is providing that roadmap and inspiration for people to choose to get well. And then on a professional side, bridging the gap between physicians and patients to better align expectations. Because the healthcare's definition of success, patient outcome success, was the diagnosis correct? Was the procedure, surgery, therapy done correctly and in a timely manner? Did the person leave the facility or the hospital, and did they not readmit in 30 days? That's their criteria for success. But think about the individual that has had something radically done to themselves that changes the path of the rest of their life. Like they're on a new life journey with no map. So you ask them, what is their definition of success? And it's like, when did I stop feeling afraid? When did I start feeling safe? And when did I feel like I could dream again?
I think even just having that path says, oh, I will be able to dream. Oh, I will feel safe. If you don't even have that path, like you said, it's chaos. And you live in that fear because, again, like you said about that bridging, basically, are you alive and did it work okay? All right, you're fine. You're fine. Go home. But there's a human being inside there. So giving them those, you will be happy again. You will smile again. You will have dreams again.
And showing people that have lived, like, I am living an amazing life, and I found this path, my journey was because I didn't know any better. I was a little kid that started playing sports at the age of 7, and I've been in competitive sports all my life. So when I was diagnosed and went through the first pacemaker thing, I thought, well, just like going to practice, to play a sport, you go to practice, and when you're consistent, you get better. And you usually have a goal or something to kind of aim for. So I just applied that to my recovery. And I went back to, after the first pacemaker, I went back to competitive windsurfing. I ended up being second fastest woman in the world for a while. And then I was, doing all these, went back to playing sports and living my life because I didn't know that I couldn't.
Right.
And it turns out that's not intuitive to everyone. And I think the older we get, we have more fear, and we as human beings, we default to the worst case scenario anyway. And when you're older, you have a lot more information on all the worst case scenarios. So we live there. And if you think about the way healthcare is designed, there isn't a billing code for happiness, and healthcare providers aren't trained to coach us back to life. They're crisis management, and they do an amazing job. And I am not an advocate of we don't need doctors. It's like we need to be better patients. We need to feel like we have control, because ultimately the goal is to go back to being a happy person.
Right.
So how do we empower physicians to understand how to use a lot of these, digital health and consumer wearables and apps to help provide patients and people the tools and information so that they can then be accountable and understand what the insights are that like when something is headed in the wrong direction, to have a data point, to use that data point as the conversation starter with their physician to more quickly diagnose conditions, or have a data-driven conversation versus trying to treat feelings. Because feelings, I felt lightheaded. No one tied that to having heart issues until we had a data point, which was the EKG. So right. You can now do that with consumer wearables, with digital health. And so the world that I've been living in for the last 8 years, working for Google, what an amazing experience to be with a company that is just so transformative and innovative. And joining Google back in 2012, I started in New York in our core infrastructure engineering. And Google has this program for 20% projects, where if you're passionate about something, you can just reach out to anyone in the organization and say, hey, I'd like to get involved.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So Google and their 20% projects. So my background is as a technologist, engineering and application development. That's what I was brought into Google for. But I started pinging everyone within Google saying, I'm interested in healthcare. I'm interested in healthcare. Who's doing something in healthcare? And I was able to take that passion, work on projects, join the Google Cloud platform team in about 6 years ago. Kind of was part of there were 3 of us that really brought healthcare to Google Cloud. And so I've spent the last 6 years focused on building out these transformation platforms to support healthcare in this medtech digital health space, along with I've been working with the Mayo Clinic on building out their next generation of healthcare transformation. So it's just been such a fantastic journey.
What you're sitting here and it, of course, it goes like time goes like this, especially when I'm talking to someone as fascinating as you. We talked about a little bit beforehand that there are no mistakes in life.
Right.
There are no mistakes. It's just what you do with them. And so if you listen to this, Heidi's life story, which is a huge inspiration, it's the choices that you made with every situation, with what you were given, good or bad, it didn't matter. And it has led you now to here, which is so amazing. No one will ever say like, wow, being born with a heart condition is going to lead you here, but you just made one choice after the other. And now you're able to inspire and help and change. And I think, not just the heart industry, but I'm listening like, oh, I could apply this to so many other things.
Yeah. And if I am able to just inspire people to, like, the greatest gift we have as human beings is that we get to wake up each day and decide what kind of life we want to live. And it doesn't matter what we did yesterday and what might happen tomorrow. It's like right now, today, who do I want to be and what do I want to accomplish? And in, this last year in 2019, I put that to the test again. I'd run out of, bike races. So, since crossing that finish line of I have since completed that 200-mile Loaded Jaw Classic 6 times. Once the twisty times in my chest healed up, I got to go do what I love, which is race mountain bikes. So I've done mountain bike stage races all over the world, 24-hour mountain bike races solo. The last one I just did was in February. But I got tired of people saying, oh, but have you done an Ironman? And I used the excuse. I actually played the victim card of, oh, my pacemaker doesn't let me run and swim. It doesn't adjust for that. Mostly because Heidi didn't want to run and swim. So it was like, wow, I have not been inspired or chosen to do that. So I thought, you know what? I have to stop saying I can't and instead say I can. The next question is, do I want to? And I thought, you know what? I do. So I spent 2019 teaching my pacemaker how to run and swim, because the device has a bunch of algorithms that are constantly learning what my body is looking for, because there's a whole bunch of sensors in the pacemaker that can determine, the difference between exercise and a tachycardia. Right. And I have had it optimized for cycling. I've been in the human performance lab, do it with my coaches, doing lactate threshold, VO2 max, and the pacemaker tech rep in there at the same time, optimizing the pacemaker to get the performance that I want for cycling. So now I had to go back to the drawing board and teach it to run and swim, because those were new biomarkers, new things it had to learn. And I could run for about 30 seconds. It thought I was having a tachycardia, and then I would have to walk for 3 minutes, and then I'd have to run 30 seconds. And I had to do the same thing with swimming. And then that was January 2019. By November 2019, I crossed the finish line of a full Ironman. Wow. So I love that,
because do I want to? Let's get rid of the excuses. Do I really want it? And it's okay to say no, I don't. Yeah. But I think what made you say yes was you had that question with yourself. You had that conversation. This isn't about can I? It's about do I want to?
Exactly.
It's a difference.
It's all choice. And it's living, it's kind of the going back to remember to walk the walk. If I'm taking Tour de Heart and I'm telling people, hey, here's a way you can get the life you want, I need to be able to actually apply that to myself. And if I'm saying I can't to something, then that defeats what I'm, can I, it
kind of makes you a hypocrite, Heidi.
I was like, okay, I have to step back and look at the why I'm saying I can't.
Yeah.
And instead say, I can, do I want to? Mm-hmm. Because and like anything that we want, it takes work. Life doesn't have an easy button. And as soon as you realize that no one cares more about your goals and happiness than you do.
I love that. Yes.
And no one's going to hand it to you. It's everything in your life. Do you want it badly enough to do the work? Yeah. And that was what Ironman was.
Mm-hmm. And look at that. And oh my goodness. So you have a new adventure, and I'm so excited to be it's kind of like in the beginning.
Yes, you're my big announcement. Like,
yes,
you were the heart. This is
and the signs, right? There are always the signs. We talked about that when we got introduced. Yeah. That you were like, okay, this you can't, if you weren't questioning it, you were doing it. But sometimes we question, am what I doing? Am I supposed to be doing this? Yes. Is this the path? Then you get little gifts that, yes, it is.
Yes, validation, like little validations that you're on the right path. I'm not big, when I want something, but going after it feels like I'm constantly banging my head against a wall. It's like, you know what? That's probably not in my highest and best interest. Perhaps we should rethink this. But then when you put something out there and the little validation gifts show up, and this week, this is my final. Tomorrow's my last official day at Google as a Googler. And, I sent out the email to all the colleagues that I've worked with over the years and had these amazing experiences with, to say I'm moving on, but that I, want to continue to be an advocate and ambassador for all the great work we've done. And just the amazing messages that I've received and people who know me. It's like, if there's ever anyone who has a passion and wants to make an impact, where I'm going and what I'm doing and starting Tour de Heart as like an official nonprofit and building out the programming for both educating physicians on how to embrace and engage patients with their data, how patients can use data responsibly for insights in their daily activities, but then how do they communicate to their physicians? And I'm in next month, I start school at Duke University for my integrative medicine health coach certification, because I want to sort of be that coach that bridges the gap.
Yeah, you have all the little tools, and you cannot, if you don't know, that's kind of my mindset. Like, if I have this idea, well, I better master it to the best of my ability, get educated the best I can, so then I can be a resource. I don't want to give them thoughts that maybe I read on the internet, or, you got to put some money where your mouth is.
Exactly. And it builds that authenticity. And I think that when you are willing to immerse yourself, you understand the problem, the problem description better. What are the pain points? And then what is the value you can bring to smooth out and streamline the process? So that's kind of my next phase.
Well, I love it. Everyone out there, if you are curious, that Tour de Heart link's right up there. Just click on it, get to know Heidi, follow her story, reach out, and because, oh my goodness. And I have my last question for you before we tie it all up. In this moment right now, Heidi, what does love mean to you?
Love to me means love and passion. It are, to me, tied together. And that passion that fills you up and brings you joy, and that ability to share that joy with others and make the 5 feet around you just a happy, loving, inviting place to inspire others.
I love that visual, the 5 feet around you.
Because that's what we can truly impact.
Yeah. And then someone else's 5 feet and 5 feet, and there we go.
And that's how we make change.
Perfect. Heidi, thank you for taking time away from your family to share with the world your amazing inspiration and story, because you can learn so many things. And I love it's the small choices, and it is the mindset. And I love that. Do I want to? Can I? But do I want to?
Right.
That is big. And there's a couple of people, and Travis said adaptation together. That is big. You adapted with your husband. You adapted with the world. You adapted with every single thing. But together, you're not alone. You're never alone.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be a lonely journey.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And Andrew just popped in. Andrew, you got to go back and listen to this, because you will love this story. You will love her life, her inspiration, her heart, everything that's going on. Heidi, thank you so much. And for everyone out there, remember, love hard, love pure, and love proactive. Until next time, we will see you. Take care.
Thank you, Danny.